Wish I could zoom this thing in a little more. There we go. Cool. All right. I just thought I'd go live for just a little bit because I wanted to talk a little bit about Storm Guardians because I actually think they have some pretty good potential. So, let me just move these out of the way. These are my these are my next painting project, and they've been taking forever. But yeah, anyway. So, played a few games this weekend, and found out that Storm Guardians are actually pretty good, which was a little surprising because I had thought, like a lot of you, that they were kind of like mediocre and that they weren't that good and they didn't have a lot of applications. But recently found out they're actually pretty decent if you have a plan for them. Hey, Anthony, what's up? Good to have you in. You're the first and only person. Oh, hey. Hey, Dola. Good to have you guys on. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Storm Guardians because I recently built my unit of Storm Guardians. I just wanted to show you them and talk a little bit about them because I think they're kind of cool. This is going to be kind of a quick live stream because I don't know how much time I have, but figured I'd share this with you guys because for the longest time I've just been proxying these models, but after the weekend I figured I'd actually start using them, and they're pretty good. I'm actually very impressed with them, and the thing I like about them the most, and they don't look good on paper, by the way, they're really a unit that you have to play with for them to be looking decent. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, these guys are kind of like, I don't want to say a hidden gem because they're not really a gem. They're more like a good tool, you know? I mean, how do I say this? They don't do any damage, right? But that's not really what you use them for. If you use them correctly, you can actually secure 2 objectives and make 2 objectives sticky in the first couple of turns in the game. And from then on, if your opponent doesn't have a quick answer to them, they can be really, really tough to actually remove. And I mean, they're not hard to kill, but the objectives are hard to take away if your opponent's not prepared for it. So I had a couple of games this weekend where I basically took these guys, and within the first couple of turns, I got a couple of objectives secured on my side of the board, you know, my home objective, and also in the mid board, so on one of the flanks. And what that did is it put a lot of pressure on my opponent to try to get that side objective from me that they weren't exactly planning on using, and I didn't have to invest any units to sit there, right? Because my Storm Guardians can just move off of it. It's sticky. If my opponent doesn't have an answer to try to get on that objective, they're pretty good. Yeah, Garen, I mean, Storm Guardians are pretty cool. Plus, they look cool. I mean, that's the thing, right? They look a lot cooler than Guardian Defenders. Let me see if I can find the one I like a lot. This one, I think. With the fusion gun. I mean, that's pretty sick. I like the new kit, you know? I actually think if Storm Guardians, like if they had like more variants of Guardians, that would be cool too. Like, remember Imperial Guard used to have like more variants for their infantry units? If they had more Guardian variants, I think that would be cool too. Like a special weapon unit of Guardians, or like a heavy weapon unit of Guardians, like, you know, where you could take multiple platforms. Yeah, honestly, 6 special weapons in the unit, right? You get 6 special weapons in the unit, 2 power swords, you get 2 fusion guns, 2 flamers. I mean, that's pretty good. A lot of people don't realize that, yeah, their melee stats really suck, but their close range shooting is actually very decent. And they can trade up into a lot of units. Like, I had a couple games the other day where I was going up against, you know, Space Marines with their new Space Marine detachments and stuff. And these guys were actually trading up into intercessors fairly well. Not exactly like super well, but, you know, breaking even with intercessors, you know? The melee is an absolute trap. You don't even want to use these guys in melee. You want to avoid melee at all costs. Because once you get into melee, they suck. They can't shoot their weapons. The only thing you can shoot is pistols. So, and that's not going to do any damage. So yeah. Yeah, and you know what, Dola? You're absolutely right. And that's something I forgot to mention in my video today where I wanted to mention it, but I forgot. I completely forgot when recording. Using Illic to make sure that, Illic and 5 Rangers to make sure the mid objective doesn't get seized on the first turn, and then moving up your Storm Guardians and moving back Illic and his unit is a great little 1-2 switch that you can pull on your opponent to where they have really no options, right? They can't shoot at Illic. If they try to get into combat with Illic, you have Phantasm, you have the D6 Outcasts movement, you have a lot of different things. And then Storm Guardians move up into position, make the objective sticky, and then your opponent's in a sticky situation themselves where they have to, actually beat the Storm Guardians on the objective, which can be difficult. I mean, some opponents are going to be able to do it, but some opponents aren't. And you know what I was also thinking the other day? I haven't tried this out yet, but hear me out. One of my buddies runs a Tau army, and he basically runs, the kind of Crisis Battlesuit kind of Tau, I mean, he doesn't even really run Fire Warriors. I think he has a couple of units, but that's about it. He runs some Kroot, stuff. Basically, the 9th edition meta, that's what he runs. So he's been running that, and he's been running the triple plasma, or I think he has double plasma and air burst or something like that in a couple of his models. And I was thinking that this would actually be a very good way of dealing with that kind of unit, right? Because the plasma guns are good and everything, but the Storm Guardians don't really care too much. So if my opponent goes all in on Storm Guardians, okay, no big deal, right? You've kind of trapped your Crisis Battlesuits in a position that I can kill them now. And, my Storm Guardians are just dead. I mean, they're dead, but who cares, right? You're going to lose your Crisis Battlesuit block in the next turn. And the objective might still be sticky if I survive, so there's that. Yeah, Guardians aren't bad. I don't think they're bad at all. I think the Storm Guardians might actually be a little bit more flexible than the Guardian Defenders as well. Controversial statement right here. I think they might be a tiny bit better on their own. I know that Guardian Defenders are good for putting a Farseer in them, and then, with the Bright Lance are pretty good, but, again, controversial statement. I think these guys might be a little bit better. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a hot take. Yeah, who's better, Storm Guardians or Guardian Defenders? Thanks, Spencer. Good to have you on, man. Honestly, I just try to give you guys, my honest opinions. Sometimes they're not meta. I don't care. I mean, I feel like the meta chasers are always going to be just looking at, the top lists and copying that. But those top players are playtesting things. They're always trying new things out. Maybe Storm Guardians become part of one of their lists, and then, people start doing that, so who knows. Yeah, Warlocks aren't a bad option for Storm Guardians either, though. You're right. I don't think I'd run more than one Warlock, though, to be honest. And sometimes I don't think it's necessary, but having a Warlock in the unit, or in some matchups, you might not even need the Warlock. You might just want to deploy the Warlock separate. And check this out. While your Storm Guardians are securing an objective in the midboard, either on the left or right flank of the battlefield, you can have a single Warlock score on secondary objectives, right? Which is pretty damn effective. And, a single Warlock by himself, you can still advance with him with his ability. So you can get, 7 inches of movement plus the 6-inch auto advance that the Warlock gets. So it's not bad. I would say what you need to know about Storm Guardians is that they're really good at securing objectives. So during your first turn, when you get your first turn, if they're on your home objective, they make it sticky. And what that means is that even if you move models off of that home objective, you still control it, so you can still score points. Otherwise, you kind of have to just babysit it with a unit. You know, you have to use your Autarch Wayleaper or Death Jester to sit back there, and that may not always be the best position for those models. So having a unit that can just, you know, make an objective sticky is really good. And then you could advance with these guys in the midboard. They move 7 and they advance 6. And you could even Fire and Fade after that for 2 CP. I know that's a wild thing. Oh, why are you using Fire and Fade on Storm Guardians? That's stupid. But, you know, if you can get to a middle objective that your opponent maybe didn't see coming, you can make that objective sticky and put your opponent in a really hard spot. No, it lasts the whole game, Spencer. That's why it's good. If it just lasted for one turn, it'd be dog shit. Sorry for the language, but it would be shit. I would never use that if that was the case. I don't think anybody would. Yeah, it's for the whole game, which is great. Really effective. That means if your opponent can't get to that objective, they literally just can't take it from you. Now, I will say this, though. At higher levels of competitive play, people will have tools to steal your home objective, but that's why you have other models, you know, nearby to support. Yeah, I actually think these guys are pretty good. See you later, Max. Thanks for stopping in. Yeah, I'm probably going to be live for about 30 minutes, so just wanted to talk to you guys about Storm Guardians really quick. I think they're a really cool unit. Like them a lot. So you want to hear something funny about these guys? I kind of went on it a little bit in the video, but I played a game this weekend against my Imperial Guard buddy. And he's running like a kind of a mix between artillery and infantry. You can't hold multiple objectives with them, though, because they can't spread out that far. It's impossible. But they can make multiple objectives sticky in different turns, though, if that's your question. Necrons. So, hey, IMG, Necrons are an army that you really have to keep your forces together to fight. So, my advice for Necrons is they're going to bring, at least if they're running really like meta stuff, they're going to bring the huge Necron Lich Blob. They're going to put that in the center of the battlefield. They're going to try to make it more resilient and essentially just try to get it to that middle objective. Hit them with a Night Spinner if you have a Night Spinner. Make them slower. Keep the Night Spinner on them all game, and then just use your greater mobility and damage to sweep the flanks. Concentrate on one unit at a time. Don't spread your damage out. Concentrate on one Necron Warrior Blob at a time. Eliminate it completely, and then move on to the next one. That's how you deal with them. They're a very tough army to beat, but I think Eldar are in a position now where they can pass the damage check that Necrons have. So a lot of armies actually can't beat Necrons because they can't pass that damage threshold that you need to actually beat them, but Eldar can. You just need the right units. And you need to ignore their Lich Guard, because if you try to go for their Lich Guard, you're going to lose. So get this. I'm playing against my Imperial Guard buddy, and first turn I secure my home objective with these guys, and then I knew, we've played against each other a lot, so he kind of always goes towards the flanks because he knows I'm going to go for it. So he, puts a lot of his infantry on the sides of the battlefield to try to collapse in. And so I knew this. So what I did was I put my Storm Guardians in the middle, and I just shot them up the middle of the battlefield and made the center objective sticky. But here's the thing, right? He had one turn. Absolutely, IMG. No problem at all. He had one turn to kill my Storm Guardians, and a lot of his infantry was actually either out of range, like half the unit was out of range of the Storm Guardians, like they didn't have good lines of sight, or they just didn't have a line of sight at all. The scale platform gives them a 5+ invulnerable save and a couple of extra wounds. So he was basically shooting basilisks at him, and he had a couple of mortars too that he was shooting at them, and I popped lightning fast reflexes. Now I know that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but I also popped go to ground on them. So I made them really tough. And previously I knew that I didn't really have any good fortune targets, so I cast fortune on them. And that's normally kind of crazy. Like anybody who has played Eldar for a while knows you don't really cast fortune on Guardians, but I knew that all of his weapons were wounding on 4s as like last guns and stuff, so I knew it would be a decent idea to do that. So I ended up actually surviving. I had like 2 Storm Guardians survive because he fired all of his indirect first, which was a mistake on his part, and then by the time his indirect was done, he no longer had line of sight to the unit with his guardsmen. So I had 2 Storm Guardians on the center objective just sitting there, like in the middle, and there's like a ruin in the middle of the battlefield, and he could not see with the rest of his guardsmen. So they made the objective sticky, and then he had to like run like a unit of guardsmen over there. It took him like 2 turns to get there. It's pretty insane, but yeah, it lost them the game. Storm Guardians won me the game because he couldn't get that center objective back until like I think turn 4. And then finally, once he did get it, it was just a cleanup time, you know? I just cleaned up his guardsmen right in the center and then reestablished, you know? So, I mean, Storm Guardians, you know, they're kind of underwhelming on paper, but they're actually pretty decent in game if you can use them right. Except if you're playing Ynnari, and then it's probably just better to do the Capellites, because the Capellites have that too with Venoms and stuff, and they're faster, But yeah, if you're just running Craftworld Eldar, I think these guys definitely pretty good. Did someone have a question that I didn't answer? I feel like I missed a question. I always am missing something on chat because it's not... for some reason, it disappears after a while. I have to fix my settings so it doesn't do that. So yeah, the cool thing about Guardians too is they're kind of one of those units that people don't really expect them to do anything because they have a bad reputation, right? So the other part of this is that if you're just playing like either semi-competitively or casually or whatever, and you put out your Storm Guardians, your opponents may not actually think they're that good and may ignore them. They're super underrated. How should you keep them alive? So Spencer, they're not going to survive the whole game. The first turn, they're going to stay alive long enough just because of line of sight blocking terrain. If you're playing on any kind of standardized table with ruins and stuff, be out of line of sight for the first turn. Now the second turn is really where it gets kind of iffy, because when you move on to the middle of the board, there's more line of sight and stuff like that. But if you bank a couple of command points and just have those ready in case your opponent makes a move for the Storm Guardians, you can use lightning fast reflexes, which gives -1 to hit. Usually the Guardians can be benefits of cover. Like if you have a lot of ruins on the battlefield, a lot of terrain, like most likely you're going to get a cover save, which is going to give you a 3+ armor save. They have a 5+ invul save. If you throw fortune on them the first turn, now I don't recommend throwing fortune on them the whole game, but at least during the first turn when they can make that center objective sticky or one of the middle of the board objectives sticky, maybe throw fortune on them, and it can help them survive against light scouting elements. So if your opponent has scouts, or if your opponent has like, you know, any kind of infiltrators or anything like that, fortune can help them survive. And honestly, it's pretty good. I mean, like against most weapons, it turns 3s into 4s, and against, you know, Imperial Guard and stuff like that, it turns 4s into 5s. So fortune can be good at helping keep these guys alive. And I'm not saying it's gonna it's gonna like save the whole squad, but if you can at least have like one Storm Guardian or two Storm Guardians left on an objective, and your opponent can't assault you, you've made that objective sticky, and the Storm Guardians have done their job, right? So, I mean, even if they die, it's not a big deal. But if you kind of need a little bit more support for them to stay alive, you have, go to ground is a good stratagem on them. It gives them automatic cover. So if your opponent, is shooting you from an angle in which you won't get a cover save, go to ground is a good option. Another good option, of course, is lightning fast reflexes, which is -1 to hit. So both of those are pretty good. And then, of course, fortune, Like, I was running these guys with a list that also had a Wraithguard blob. And the Wraithguard blob didn't need fortune on the first turn, right? It just didn't. So I cast it on the Storm Guardians. And that's just mostly because most of my opponents, like artillery units, wouldn't have been effective against them anyway. Would have been pretty garbage. Like mortars, and the biggest threat he had was 2 basilisks. And the basilisks, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they have damage 2. They might have damage 3, but even the basilisks were not going to be very effective against Wraithguard. Yeah, it does. Fortune and lightning fast stacks. So you get -1 to hit, and you get -1 to wound. So it's really good. I mean, a squad like this can actually become quite durable against like light arms fire and stuff like that. I mean, against some serious stuff, like if your opponent is bringing like a ton of firepower against them, like they're gonna probably die. But this is how I figure it. If you can make your opponent use a couple of more units that turn to shoot, especially indirect fire units, at the Storm Guardians, and they aren't shooting your other stuff on the battlefield, like that's a win too, right? Because they're just Storm Guardians. They're not Shadow Specters, they're not Striking Scorpions, or, well, not Striking Scorpions, but they're not Specters, they're not Warp Spiders, they're not War Walkers, right? So, like, that is pretty good. And by the way, in that game I played against that guard player, I did have a couple of War Walkers, and his Basilisks could have easily killed one of them if they concentrated on them. Hey, K Canada. Advice for 500 points. My advice is, well, unsolicited, unsolicited advice on 500-point games. They're not the most balanced games right now in 10th edition, but if you're starting out, I think a pretty good balance is if you start off with the Battle Force, the Combat Patrol, and you make a few adjustments to it. Like, for example, if you want to run like Storm Guardians instead of regular Guardians, you can do that. The Wraithlord is a good pick for a 500-point game. Wraithlords are really good in 500 points. They're very tough, very hard for enemies to deal with. If you combo, Fortune on the Wraithlord, it's really good. Storm Guardians are decent in 500-point games, but I actually think they're better in bigger games. So I would say maybe stay away from Guardians altogether in small point games like that, and maybe go for something else. Shroud Runners are good. Rangers are good. I really like Dire Avengers in small point games because there's not a lot of like heavy artillery firepower that opponents can bring, and they're going to have to move their infantry up to engage you. And Dire Avengers get a 4+ Overwatch, which is really powerful. So they're good as well. My thing about 500 points is that if you're a new player and you're just playing 500, just kind of pick units that you like and make sure you have some good anti-tank. Make sure you have some, anti-infantry in your list. So, stuff like that. Just try to make a balanced list. That would be my advice. I'm actually going to make a video on that pretty soon, by the way. How to make a 500-point list. I haven't played a lot of 500-point games this edition, so it's a little bit different than 10th or 9th edition. I think in 9th edition it was very much, make sure you cover all your bases, because you're going to get those opponents who bring like really tough stuff in 500 points. So, K Canada, one of the things you might want to pick up for a 500-point game is a Warwalker and a Farseer. Those are the two things. I think if you pick up a Warwalker and a Farseer, and that's pretty common to come by as a Farseer, you'll be pretty good for anti-tank for what you'll face. and then just kind of pick up some like, anti-infantry, maybe some Dire Avengers, maybe like a Wraith Lord, maybe for some kind of tough durable, like a very durable unit, stuff like that. But yeah, by the way, if you guys ever want advice on anything, or you guys want advice on army lists, yeah, Cape Canada, Warwalker is great for 500 points, man. It's really good. 2 Bright Lances on that thing, and that thing will take out tanks very easily that would fit in 500 points. I very highly doubt you're going to see people bring anything like a Land Raider, but you may see, guard players bringing a Lehman Russ. Lehman Russ is a common option. Lehman Russ is very vulnerable to Warwalkers, stuff like that, so that's a good option. Yeah, Warwalkers are very good. The reason why Warwalkers are preferred a little bit over Hornets now is because you can't target vehicles and stuff with Phantasm anymore. So having a Warwalker being able to expose itself and be just a little bit tougher, having that 4+ invul save, having the -1 to wound is a lot better for a lot of different situations. Like a lot of things just bounce off of Warwalkers, by the way. I don't know if you guys know this, but they also have just a -1 to wound, which is great at range, right? So if an opponent like fires a last cannon at it, typically a last cannon is going to wound on a 3+. Well, against a Warwalker, it wounds on 4s, right? And that's a big difference, especially if your opponent has access to rerolls. A 4+ save or a 4+ to wound is a lot harder to make than a 3+. And you get a 4+ invul save against it, whereas a Hornet would only get a 6+. Oh, that's cool. Okay, Canada, that's awesome. That's an awesome thing that your local store does. That's cool. I like that. Yeah, I definitely recommend picking up a Warwalker. Warwalkers are pretty easy to pick up. Like, they're not too expensive. You can pick them up, like, on eBay. I've seen them for, like, $30 on eBay, like, new. I've also seen them for much cheaper used. They're just broken, busted. They're busted up things, but, I mean, you can get one for fairly good price. They're a little bit of an older model. They're from 2006. So they're pretty old, but they still look good. They're not the ancient Warwalker that has like the pilot exposed in the front without any canopy or anything like that. So, the lore of the old Warwalker was that it didn't need a canopy because it was surrounded by an energy field that would block attacks, which is pretty cool. So I'm glad they actually gave it kind of the 4+ invul in this edition to represent that. It's cool. Oh, that's really cool, man. Yeah, Imperial Guard are kind of fun to fight against. Yeah, the Night Spinner's amazing, dude. Night Spinner's absolutely amazing, Brett. It's great. I love Night Spinners, dude. By the way, they're one of my favorite grav tanks of all time. I used to run 2 of them in 5th edition back in the day. Oh man, like if you thought they were brutal in today's like meta, like in 5th edition, oh fuck, dude. I know a lot of you are going to say, well, they're not really good anti-vehicle, but back in those days, like, terrain was different. Like, you didn't have obscuring terrain. You had true line of sight. So a lot of times, either the terrain you had blocked line of sight completely or it didn't. So things like fire prisms were really hard to use, even though they were still good. I know they need to get more Night Spinners and fire prisms stocked because they're going for like $100 and something bucks on eBay. People are jacking up the price to like freaking $200 a Night Spinner. It's crazy. But yeah, it's pretty insane, dude. Night Spinners are great value. I've always liked them. They were kind of terrible last edition, though. I have to say. They were pretty awful. So I'm glad they have a good ability now. Like in a couple of my lists, my competitive lists, I run 2 of them. Yeah, Jeremy, pick up that Warwalker if you can. Yeah, that's true, Brett. They do. Yeah, eBay can be a little bit iffy, Like, I mean, if I had extra Warwalkers, I'd be probably selling them right now. I just don't. I used to have 9 of them. I used to have 9 of them, dude. Yeah, you can get a lot of good proxy models on Etsy, and like there's Warwalker proxies out there that you can get like fairly easily. Um, by the way, if you guys need to proxy stuff in games, just ask your opponent, "Hey, is it okay if I proxy this just to try it out?" Let me show you guys real quick what I do to what I use to proxy, because I proxy a lot of stuff. I mean, that's why I call myself Proxy Hammer. I mean, there's no way I own all the stuff that I tell you guys about in my lists. I use proxies quite often to try out new things, you know. Well, Spencer, shoot, I wish I could see it. If you're on our Discord or you're a member of our Discord, you can pop it up and ask the community. They'll be able to tell you. Let me check this out. 1 second. I'll be right back. So you see this? These are all the proxies that I use, dude. I know that's gonna, I mean, some of you may like wince at that, you know, but I mean, when you play as much as me, like, you start to not give a fuck anymore. You start to not care. These are my Warwalker proxies. So basically what it is what I do is I just measure, I put a little like marker here where the height is on a Warwalker, and I just use it for that game. So this one's new. I just made this like last week, but this is this same base size as a Warwalker. So you see the same base, measured pretty precisely, and then you just put the height up there, and you could use this for a proxy against friends. So if you wanted to try, Spencer, if you join, I know this is going to be kind of weird. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but if you join the Patreon, there's a free trial on there. If you want to do it for free, just cancel the free trial before it ends, and you get the Discord link from me. And that goes for everybody, by the way. Everyone who's watching, if you want to get on our channel's Discord for free, just do a free trial, get the Discord link from me, and then you can always cancel, obviously, before the trial ends, and you're not charged. Obviously, if you do want to support the channel, I mean, you know, I'd really appreciate it, but you don't have to. I just wanted the community to grow. That's the main thing. So if you guys want to do that, you can. And then, you know, our community is really helpful. There's a lot of guys on there, some of them who have been playing longer than I have. I've been playing Eldar for 20 plus years. There's guys on there that have played them since before I was born in the early 90s. You know, I was born in 1993. So can you believe that? There's guys that that have been playing longer than me, been playing Eldar for like 30 years. But there are, and they'll help you out. They know a lot of stuff as well. So yeah, I can't advocate more for proxies and stuff. It's a really good way to learn the game. Like if you really want to learn the game and you want to learn all the different units without spending like thousands and thousands of dollars, definitely proxy models. There's no shame in it. I actually think one of the best ways to start the game now in 10th edition is to buy a combat patrol and just use proxies around that to try new stuff. That's tight, man. Yeah, Eldar are a cool faction. They're one of the coolest. I think they are the coolest faction in the game. Oh, really, dude? That's cool. 2nd edition Grots, man. That's cool. Although Grots don't do anything. Grots are probably one of the most useless out of production models because they just do nothing. They just sit in the back. You never see them. They're not at the forefront of any battle, you know? There's so many cool conversions I've seen Orc players do with Grots and stuff, though, man. Like, so Orc players can get crazy with conversions. Yeah, Jeremy, I feel you, man. I feel you. That's why I proxy models, man. That's why I proxy. There's no shame in it. There's absolutely no shame. Of course, if you're competing in a tournament or something like that, you probably obviously need to have the real models, the real McCoy. But if you're just playing with friends, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to proxy or use out-of-production models or whatever you want, right? Like, these Guardians have, like, slightly bigger bases than, like, regular Guardians, but who cares? Like, if you're playing a semi-competitive or even just a casual game with friends, it shouldn't matter. It only matters in tournament play, and even then, the slightly larger bases rarely come into play. Like, I've only had it come into play one time in competitive play. One time. Yeah. Yeah, Jeremy, I totally understand, man. Sometimes that happens, you know. But you know, like my schedule is more of like an even schedule. Sometimes I can play during the week, so it's a little different. Eldar dice. Yeah, Eldar dice. You know what? I bought some Eldar dice when they came out a while ago, like a long time ago, and guess what? I rolled them in one game, and they sucked, dude. They sucked. I rolled so bad with my new Eldar dice that I had spent like $20 on. I rolled so bad. And then I kept using them and they just rolled bad every time. I don't know if it was cursed, man. The dice were absolutely cursed. Okay, cool deal, Spencer. Yeah, I mean, I'll check out the Discord later and answer your questions, but there's a lot of guys in there that'll probably jump on it before me. Yeah, Dola, can you believe that, dude? I rolled so badly with them, and you know what? Eventually, I just sold them because there was a guy that came into the store that was kind of a collector, and he saw that I had Eldar dice, and he's like, "Man, they've been out of stock in those for months. Like, wish I had some." And I was like, I just smiled for a second, and like my like Eldar kind of like trickery mind was at play. I was like, "Would you like to buy them off me?" And he's like, "Oh, I would love to buy them off you. I'll give you $20 for them." And I was like, perfect, you know? And like I sold him the freaking dice. And I saw him play a game, and guess what? He rolled great. I couldn't believe it. Freaking sixes all game. And I was like, okay, well, they just hated me, I guess. So it was good that he had them. So it was a good buy for him. But yeah, it was a good sell for me. I guess it was good for both of us, you know? The strands of fate were at play. So yeah, man, Storm Guardians. If you guys want to try out Storm Guardians in a couple games, like, tell me how you do. Yeah, they weren't meant for me at all, Dola. They weren't meant for me at all. They needed to burn. I'm not a fan of burning dice, but I will sell dice if they don't work. I am a believer in the fates. That's one of the reasons why I play Eldar, you know. I do believe in the fates. Shit, that's funny. By the way, guys, this freaking thing, man. This freaking thing. I always kill it like almost like immediately because it's 2 wounds. Busted for loaded dice. Yeah, man. I've played against some people who I know they were using loaded dice and cooked dice. Like I went against a player once in kind of an RTT competitive scene, and one of his dice was like lopsided, and it was what he did was he baked his dice. He tried to bake them in the oven and warp them in such a way that they would roll high. And so he baked them, right? But okay, get this. I'm just gonna say it how it is. The guy was a complete idiot and baked them the opposite way, so they rolled low. The guy went to the tournament thinking he was giving his dice an advantage, and actually he was a disadvantage. He was rolling fucking 3s, 2s, and 1s the whole game. Oh, dude, it was so funny. He was a Black Templar player. I'll never forget that shit because this other player in the tournament was like, hey, dude, that guy's using baked dice. Watch out. And I was like, I'll play him. I don't care if he's using baked dice. And he was kind of an inexperienced player anyway, but it's just he baked them the wrong fucking way, and they were rolling low. Yeah, oh, shit. That's fucking funny. Anyway, yeah, that shit happens all the time, though, man. That shit happens. Though people try to cheat, you know? Like, I've been in so many games where people try to, like, do little cheating. I call it little cheating because it's not, like, using, like, the rules and cheating big time. But you're cheating a little bit, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, something should have been a cocked dice. You're not counting it as a cocked dice because it's a 1, you know, but you count a 6 when it's purely, you know, stuff like that. Like, people do that sometimes. But that's okay. It's not a big deal. I mean, people are really invested. That's the thing. They want a good time. They're really invested. It's not a big deal. Thanks, Wolf. Hey, Toys. How's it going, dude? I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you on, man. Toys is an old school subscriber. He was here from, like, the beginning of the channel. It's good to see him on. Cool, man. Well, Toys, it's funny that you're on because I'm about to actually end the stream, so it kind of sucks for you, man. But hopefully I can give you guys more notice. It just sometimes these streams just come up because I have time and I want to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about something. But you know, check out my video on Storm Guardians if you can today, because I have a video on that. I have a couple of other things coming out this week, including an update on my Eldar Knights fan decks. I'm going to start calling it a fan decks because that's what it is, really. It's just comes from myself, my own ideas about what I would actually do. Yeah, you got to go to the gym, got to work out. True. So anyway, I have this Eldar Knights fan decks coming out. I have a couple more data sheets that I want to show you guys. I posted the Void Eliminator, the Void Annihilator, excuse me, last week. And I'm going to post a couple more this week and hopefully give you guys a little bit of more of a taste of what the Eldar Knights will look like. Harlequin players are placing good. That's cool, man. Well, you know how they're playing? I mean, Harlequins aren't bad. It's just you have to be a really good player now to play them well, you know? They're not bad, though. They're just not top tier because melee is kind of shit now. I would say that the Harlequin players are placing well because they're using most of their shooting. They're using their Void Weavers and they're using that kind of stuff more, like their Sky Weavers and Void Weavers, to great advantage, and just kind of using their Harlequin troops to clean up stuff after. But, you know, I think they're doing a lot better now since Towering got nerfed. When Towering got nerfed, Harlequins, like, I think their win rate rose up because I was playing pure Harlequins before Towering got nerfed, and it sucked against Towering. I played against Chaos Knights and it pretty much got tabled. Yeah, Sky Weavers are fucking... I mean, the only reason that Chaos Knight player beat me so bad when I did that video about it, it's funny because he's actually kind of my friend. We play a lot against each other, but he beat me so bad because of his Towering special rules. Like, and you really don't need that much firepower to kill Quins, you know? So, like, having that Towering against, like, Sky Weavers and Void Weavers when you can't, like, really hide is, like, really hard. Because, you know, they float, so... It's not true line of sight blocking. But anyway. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to end the stream here. It's good to, you know, see you guys on. I'm glad you guys joined. We'll probably have another stream maybe in a couple days or maybe in, like, you know, 4 or 5 days, something like that. And we'll try to, like, talk about something else. And I'll see you guys next time, all right? Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for showing up and talking to me and, you know, joking around and humoring my old bullshit stories. All righty. See you later, guys. Have a good one.